Good morning, everybody. Welcome to those online and welcome particularly to those also in the Peatland Pavilion. My name is Sarah Fowler. I'm Chief Executive of the Peat District National Park Authority, and we give you a warm welcome from all the partners as part of the Great North Bog. In the words of David Attenborough, just think what we can do for the planet and its people if we work together. And that is exactly what the Great North Bog is about. I'm going to share a screen for you all to take you through a presentation to talk about the aim of the Great North Bog. Let's put this on slideshow. This morning, we want to share with you what we've been doing, working together for the Great North Bog, and what our future aspirations are. And we ask you to come and join us on this mission that we have. As I've said, my name is Sarah Fowler. I work at the National Park Authority here in the Peat District, but today and everything we're doing about the Great North Bog is not about the organisation, it's not about our lanyards, it's actually about a common mission that we've all got. And that common mission is to protect and care for the peatlands and restore them in the northern part of England. So what you're going to hear this morning, you're going to hear from me a quick introduction to what the Great North Bog means. I'm then going to hand over to Chris Woodley-Stewart, who's the Chief Executive of the North Pennines AONB, to talk about the delivery partnerships themselves. You'll then hear from a range of speakers, public and private sector, about the benefits of the Great North Bog and why they are involved and we're working together. And then there'll be a chance for a panel discussion to hear more about the work on the ground with the Great North Bog. So first and foremost, some of you might be asking, what is the Great North Bog? It covers 4 national parks, including the Peat District, the Lake District, Yorkshire Dales and Northumberland National Parks. It covers 3 areas of outstanding natural beauty, the North Pennines, Nidderdale and Forest of Bowland, and it covers the South Pennines Park. It covers 92% of England's upland peat, some of it in the most degraded state in the UK, possibly across Europe as well. The Great North Bog, in a nutshell, is the protected landscapes and our partners from the Wildlife Trust, the environmental NGOs, public and private sector, coming together, recognising that we have a collective duty to the nation and the planet to protect the UK's peatland. The UK's peatland are the UK's rainforests, and that's what we're doing. We've got 6 partnerships working together who in the past 20 years have restored over 1,000 square kilometres of peat in that period. So we know what we're doing. But despite that massive effort from those 6 partners, we've still only touched the surface of the restoration effort for peatland in the Great North Bog area. We've restored less than 1/5 of the total area, the peatland that needs restoration here. And the peatland in the north of England needs our attention because, as I've said, it's some of the most degraded peat in the country. It's been damaged by atmospheric pollution, damaged by drying out. To take the Peat District, just one example, it's one of the hardest hit areas. We're trying to undo centuries of industrial revolution from the industrial working in Manchester and Sheffield that dumped atmospheric pollution on our peat bogs. We've got cadmium, we've got arsenic, we've got zinc and lead on our peat bogs. So we're starting from a point of restoration of our peat bogs and turning them into shining examples of carbon sequestration. So that is what the Great North Bog is about. It's about restoring 7,000 square kilometres of carbon-rich peat. It's taking us 20 years so far to restore 1,000 square kilometres. We don't have the time to run at that same run rate. So that's why we're coming together, we're pooling our skills, making a revolutionary change in the rate of restoration in England's upland peat. Our mission is that 7,000 square kilometres, and to do it in 20 years. It needs financing to the tune of £200 million. That financing will give back to the nation and the world in bucket loads. It will give back on climate. And that is why we're presenting this to you today. It will stabilise the 400 million tonnes of carbon we currently have stored in the peat now. And it will avoid the losses that we're currently losing every single year in the Great North Bog. We are losing 3.7 million tonnes of carbon that's currently being released. We want to stop that release and store more carbon. It will give back in flood resilience. Peat restoration is one of the best natural flood risk solutions. It slows the flow of water and it reduces the risk to millions of properties downstream in the downstream catchments from our upland peatland. It also brings a whole range of other benefits. Water security. Eroding peat discolours water, increases the cost of water treatment. The Great North Bog is a water source for 15 million people in our catchment area. If we can restore the peatland, we can reduce the cost of treatment to those 15 million people and increase security of supply. It benefits in nature's recovery, helps reverse the decline in upland species that we've been seeing. For example, the curlew and golden plover, we can start getting those back in our upland peatland areas. It helps us recover. It helps us recreate our connection back with nature and reconnect, and a new relationship will help us bounce back and be more resilient as people and be more better connected. And finally, it helps with skills. It helps build our economies, building the skills and the capacity in nature-based solutions to tackle climate change, because that is the future for tackling climate change. So what are we currently doing? Well, this is a collaborative effort, and we have been collaborating across the 6 peatland partnerships the last 20 years. We're bringing on board partners. We've got the Environment Agency, Natural England, Defra. We're working with important landowners and land managers. They're crucial in our current activities. And we're investigating blending our investment in public and private sector support to finance our ambition here. I'm going to finish with a question about where next. Well, actually, the where next is now. We've the vision across the partnership. We're working now on how we collaborate and make that revolutionary change in how we're working. And our aim is to officially launch the Great North Bog in spring 2022. What we want to do today is share with you some of that work that we're doing to get to that place. And I'm going to hand over now to Chris Woodley-Stewart, who's going to share with you a little bit about what the Peatland partnerships are currently doing. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm, as Sarah said, Chris Woodley-Stewart. I'm director of the North Pennines AONB partnership. I'm going to be with you as your moderator for the rest of the session this morning. And we'll be having a Q&A later with colleagues from the delivery partnerships. But right now, I'm just going to give you a little, if I can share my screen, whistle-stop tour of those partnerships and what they do. In the hope that my screen is now sharing. Love to. Thank you. First IT glitch is mine entirely. So, okay, I'm going to talk about the delivery partnerships in the Great North Bog. It's a beautiful image of the moorlands in Lancashire here to kick us off. Sarah's begun to outline what some of the problem is, but peatlands have been damaged by decades of drainage, 200 years of atmospheric pollution, inappropriate management of various kinds. She's also alluded to the 3.7 million tonnes of lost carbon every year, but the more damaged our peatlands are, the more it also reduces their capacity to sequester more carbon from the atmosphere, increases flood risk, leads to loss of biodiversity and loss of grazing land. So we are a coalition for nature, climate and people, the 6 delivery partnerships that I'm going to outline in a minute, working with wider local partnerships with other bodies like the National Trust and Rivers Trusts, and crucially, working with landowners and managers, because overwhelmingly, we're not working on land that we own. We're working with private landowners and managers and developing close partnerships with those to deliver for peatland. We have been supported in the past by the EU, by the UK government and its agencies, by trusts and foundations, you'll hear from Jenny later, and by the private sector, especially water companies. And you will hear from Yorkshire Water later, who've been a great supporter of our work to date. We have an outstanding track record. Moors for the Future, Yorkshire Peat Partnership and North Pennines AONB team alone have restored an area of peatland the size of cities like Seoul or Vancouver, 10 times the size of Newcastle in northeast of England language. But these are not small areas that we've restored thus far, but we do have a clear mission to restore all of the north of England's degraded peatland over the next 20 years or faster. Sarah's talked about these places. Here they are on a map, primarily within the protected landscapes, but also in the South Pennines Park and parts of Northumberland outside the National Park. And this is our aim, that we are focused on restoration to restore functioning wetland ecosystems like this one. In the past, especially between the 40s and the 90s, drainage ditches, grips, were dug across the moorlands of the north, and you can see them here with the aim of promoting agricultural productivity. We had 9,800 kilometres of grips in the North Pennines alone. Our early work has been in blocking those grips, particularly in the North Pennines and the Yorkshire Dales, where that was a major problem. And we have moved on to working on bare and eroding peat. And the benefits of peatland restoration are seen really quickly. You can see here this how we've read the way that water moves through this landscape on the left-hand side, found the best places for interventions. You can see the photograph in the middle that these interventions very quickly start holding back water. And within 18 months, you can see the picture on the right, is this same location, revegetating, healing, restoring, and delivering for nature and people and climate. We cut heather on a large scale and transport it to site, often with a helicopter. We realise that releases carbon, but these are very, very remote places. It's transporting across very fragile habitats, and these are huge quantities of heather brash that we move up onto the moors, seed-rich brash that we spread to promote regeneration and the binding together of bare and eroding peat. And we've also been focused on sphagnum inoculation, literally the planting of sphagnum back into the moors, and it's really, really effective. Sarah talked about raising £200 million. Well, we know that the benefits of investing in nature, it says 5 to 1 on this screen. We know they're more than that. It's not that we can't afford to, it's that we can't afford not to. We're looking for £200 million. That's also known as a Neymar. That's how much someone paid to sign this footballer's registration to play for Paris Saint-Germain, minus £2 million. The money is out there. It's a question of whether the will is out there in society to fix these kinds of problems. We're focused on, I'm going to be increasingly focused on training and capacity building for our staff, for staff from other organisations, and for contractors. There's a real contractor capacity issue in helping us restore this peatland. We're about improving evidence and data. There's rigorous monitoring undertaken of our work. And we're about raising the profile of peatlands for all that they deliver for society, be it advocacy to decision makers, as you can see here, to the wider public through some work here through Moors for the Future, and through other land managers and landowners. Moors for the Future in the southern part of the Great North Bog area is about creating a positive future for Europe's most degraded blanket bog. This picture here is from 1976 and includes Chris Dean, who's on the call today. This is the same family in 2003 and the same family in 2013 after some of the work of Chris's team restoring. You can see that transformation that Chris's team have created in that landscape. And it's still happening today here at Wessendon Head. As we speak, Chris's team and partners are out there restoring bog this morning. In the AONB partnership, we've been working on peatland restoration for nearly as long, since 2006. You can see here the picture at the top, a healing grip field here on the Geltsdale RSPB reserve that we worked on. After 6 months, you can see how it's starting to hold back water. After 18 months, it is really, really healing well. So you can see how effective this work is. The work that we're all doing is on a grand scale. This is a UAV photograph of interventions with heather brash spreading, which are the little white bags, the huge white bags actually, but they're little on this screen, coir matting and stone dams, restoring huge areas of peatland. Our team alone has restored an area 3 times the size of Newcastle, and the avoided carbon loss of that is 440,000 tonnes. It's the equivalent of the annual emissions from 1 million UK homes. So this is significant stuff. Yorkshire Peat Partnership's been restoring blanket bog across the protected landscapes of Yorkshire and the Forest of Bowland, partly in Lancashire, since 2008, led by Tim Tom. And as Tim says here, working together as part of the Great North Bog Coalition provides a stronger, more coordinated voice for England's northern peatlands and will lead to greater restoration effort. And there's no one working harder than Tim to make this happen. His team, and you can see here some peat bunding at Bleabury Moor, have restored also 40,000 hectares since 2008. The Lancashire Peat Partnership, established by Lancashire County Council, the Forest of Bowland AONB and the Environment Agency in 2013, is now coordinated by Lancashire Wildlife Trust. They've collated evidence and data on peatland condition that's allowed them to create the reports that have unlocked funding to support work on the ground. And the Forest of Bowland team alone has helped to secure £2.5 million to invest in restoration across 18 large moorland sites in Lancashire. The top picture is actually a really fantastic work and something we don't always think about. It's removing trees from blanket bog. The main picture here is their work on Whiteley Moor, which is just outside the park, where it's a Northumberland Wildlife Trust reserve. Northumberland Wildlife Trust are other major partners in the Northumberland Peat Partnership. And you can see their gully blocking work and coir matting work here, helping to hold back water and heal these moorlands. It's worth saying that the Northumberland Peat Partnership is new, but partners in Northumberland have a really long track record of working on peatland, right back to the work on the Border Myres. And again, a quote from Duncan here from the Northumberland Wildlife Trust, that being involved in the Great North Bog for him is about providing support and sharing techniques and helping us all understand how we can do this work better. The Cumbria Peat Partnership has restored 5,000 hectares of peatland. And Steve Trotter, who's with us on the call today from Cumbria Wildlife Trust, is focusing here on the importance of peatland restoration as a nature-based solution for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And that this work allows us to generate the shared skills and approaches that we need to make this work successful. I'll finish with a quote from Sarah Johnson, who's also on the call today, because I think it sums up for me much of what we're about here. Peatlands don't respect boundaries. Individually, all the partnerships have accomplished much already, but this coalition will enable us to accomplish more together than we could alone, with the ambition and the urgency that matches what is required to restore and protect our peatlands. I hope that whistle-stop tour through the delivery partners gives you a sense of who and where we are, what we've done so far and where we want to go. And I'm now going to hand over to Dianna Kopansky from the UN Environment Programme, who's the Programme Management Officer, Global Peatlands Coordinator, and has done a huge amount of work to make the Peatland Pavilion possible. Dianna, I will unshare my screen as soon as I possibly can. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope my screen sharing is working. I think we're all pros at this right now. Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be with you, the Great North Bog team. It's really an inspiration. You have so much to share. Today at the Peatland Pavilion, the theme is working together. And I think that this is remarkable, what you've shared here, and also the level of ambition that you're embarking upon. And I really hope that you get the global attention, visibility, and support that you deserve to make the Great North Bog launch an absolute success, and really to deliver what you're signing up for at scale. It's just so critical, and the numbers are astounding. So really, congratulations. I'm going to take you through a little bit more about how the United Nations Environment Program's work toward the Ecosystem Restoration Decade and the Global Peatlands Initiative contribution to this, and how you can get involved, and also how everyone can benefit from the deep knowledge and experience that you are able to share. So we really invite you to do that. The Global Peatlands Initiative is a partnership. It's working to save peatlands as the world's largest terrestrial organic carbon stock. We're now 46 organizations strong, and we're welcoming more members. Basically, we work together in the spirit of partnership, working in our areas of expertise to really try to amplify and accelerate peatlands protection, restoration, and sustainable management. And the Peatlands Initiative has also secured a spot and inspired restoration, the Generation Restoration, which is our UN Decade for Ecosystems Restoration. Indeed, peatlands is one of the key 8 ecosystems which we're working toward, and the Global Peatlands Initiative and partners are actually responsible for delivering this locking in carbon, whether that's through protective measures, conservation, but also through ambitious restoration targets. We can't just only do conservation. We need to urgently make the efforts to heal our planet. We do know that nature takes time to heal, even if we give them a helping hand. And we know peatlands take a long time to heal, but man, they're powerful when they do. So what does good restoration look like? It looks like people are involved. There's a continuum. There's drivers for change. It's also this sharing of knowledge, which I'm really counting on the Great North Bog to share their knowledge, and of course about delivering results. And these are some of the assets, the simple messages that the UN Decade on Ecosystems Restoration is making available to everyone. In the decade, we have indeed the Peatlands tab, and I want to encourage you to take the time. I know it's so busy in your seasons, but there's so many volunteers, young people, dynamic people that are capable also of helping you to get your work out there. So we really do hope that you'll take the time, which will give you the visibility that you deserve, to log in your targets and also to share your experience, so that people from around the world can not only see the work that you do, but also be inspired by the level of ambition and the connecting up that you're doing. So please do try to log your work on the Ecosystem Restoration the Decade website, register as an implementer, and make sure you tag your work as Peatlands. We also are seeing more and more restoration products and guidance notes coming out specifically for peatland restoration. Here's a simple briefing note from the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. They have a target to support all countries to restore peatlands, and this simple guidance note that was launched in October is also very valuable. Excuse me. And what I really want to commend is that the peatlands voice is being heard loud and clear. Not only are we recognized, and the science and economics and practice work is coming out in United Nations Environment Program major publications, such as Becoming Restoration, Generation Restoration, but we also are in the State of Finance for Nature report. We've logged in a baseline. We are also recognized, peatlands, as one of the key nature-based solutions for climate change mitigation. And we're honored as well and appreciative of the work of global expert economists, Edward Barbier and Joanne Burgess, who launched an Economics of Peatlands Conservation, Restoration, and Sustainable Management, really to know that we deserve this restoration investment for peatlands, and to also share some interesting and innovative ways that actually peatlands can become more valued. They're currently undervalued and underinvested in. So this is a real tool that all of our partners can use to put that, the numbers, to put the policy measures on the table. We need to triple investments in nature, and certainly looking at investing in peatlands restoration is one way to do that. Everyone has a role to play in ecosystem restoration. Every single one of us can make a difference, whether that's the choice that you're making on composting your food at home, choosing peat-free alternatives, and also just getting out there on the bog to support those that are doing that extremely hard work. Happy that the partners here are already part of the Global Peatlands Initiative, and looking forward to inspiring more to join and share through peer-to-peer learning. Is such a powerful tool, and I just commend the partners that are doing that and appreciate you for that. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Dianna. That was fantastic. We're now going to move on from the global to the more local again, and hear from my colleague Alison Whalley from the Environment Agency, the Environment Agency have been fantastic supporters of our peatland work right across the north. I have Alison's slides, so I'm just going to share my screen. which I hope you can now see. And over to you, Alison.
Hi everyone, my name is Alison Whalley and I work for the Environment Agency. I'm based in Northwest England and I've been leading the Environment Agency Peatland agenda for the last 10 years. The Environment Agency is a government agency and our aim is to create a better place for people, wildlife and the environment. And one of the main focus areas is improving and enhancing the water environment across England. Now, the health of the rivers and the wetlands in the north of England can really be influenced by the state of peatland soils and habitats across the landscape. And the Great North Bog area and associated partnerships provide an amazing opportunity to not only restore peatlands in a vast area, but also the headwaters of over 20 river catchments that link into that area. And this will have a beneficial effect, as the other speakers have mentioned, on a wide range of ecosystem services that peatlands provide, but also that rivers provide, from flood resilience to carbon, water quality, water resources, and biodiversity. And it really will help us deliver climate mitigation, climate resilience, and adaptation to a range of wetland habitats. Next slide, please, Chris. So in terms of policy, in 2018, the government launched a 25-year plan, which was hugely ambitious in terms of leaving a greener legacy. In this year, the government has launched the England Peatland Action Plan, which has many goals, including the conservation of carbon, biodiversity, water environment, historic environment, landscape conservation. And that really gives us lots of hooks and lots of drivers and ambition to really commit to restoring peatlands for a wide range of reasons. The Environment Agency has a key role in playing to help deliver the England Peatland Action Plan. And some of these ways include, if I can just go to the next slide, Chris, please. What we're doing now in terms of us being able to really help the Great North Bog area and the peatlands in England is setting up a national and local knowledge exchange hub. We have a number of specialists in the Environment Agency, from water resources experts to ecologists, hydrologists, flood risk specialists, GIS experts. And internally, we're really sharing that knowledge, and being able to link in with the Great North Bog and share that knowledge is something that is just a fantastic ability to make the most of the resources that we have. We're also working with partners to develop and fund research, from building our natural flood management evidence to understanding the pollution that potentially occurs from degraded peatlands. We're continuing to invest in the 6 partnerships of the Great North Bog and the Great North Bog itself to really help forward and drive the ambition that's so needed. We're exploring green finance. The England Peatland Action Plan is clear that the government cannot fund all peatland restoration. So we're linking in with green finance experts to really understand how we can bring that private investment through. And we're also sharing our knowledge and influencing in the planning system and with water companies to make sure that any actions really do look at integrated outcomes for the water environment and for peatland. Next slide, please, Chris. So key to success of delivery is thinking at landscape scale and catchment scale, and that's something the Environment Agency has always done, and it's key to success in delivering large-scale restoration. As I mentioned previously, the Great North Bog covers over 20 river catchment headwaters in the area. So I'm just going to share a couple of examples that we're really hoping the Great North Bog will help us with, and also is key to delivery. Water quality wise, we have a responsibility to understand and restore our rivers. So we're investing in partnerships in the Great North Bog to understand how the peatland, the degraded peatland, is potentially impacting the water quality from a chemical perspective, a biological and ecological perspective. So we're investing in surveys this year, and that will enable us to look at a catchment scale and understand where the peatland, the degraded peatland, is potentially impacting on for the flora and fauna of rivers. And we have a database which shows that, called the Data Catchment Explorer. And that enables us to really think catchment and landscape scale and make the most of our resources, so we can focus restoration on peatland that needs restoring, but that will also help restore headwaters to benefit rivers. Next slide, please, Chris. The other aspect that we're really looking at investing and committed to investing is on our natural flood management element. So at the catchment scale, the Environment Agency is really keen to understand where we would invest in restoration of peatland to benefit communities at risk. There's many communities at risk across the north of flooding, and we're really keen on understanding how we can invest for integrated outcomes. One of the ways we're doing that is sharing our LiDAR data, which enables digital terrain models to be built, but we're also looking at working with partners to understand how to interrogate it. We're working with the North Pennines at the moment to offer training, and that training will be able to really understand the flow paths on a catchment level, where height data is imperative to understand where to put those interventions. We're also investing in mapping and building evidence across a number of catchments, linking in with modelling, flood risk management and ecology. We're really keen that what we can do really ticks as many boxes as possible, from ecology to peatland and the water environment. So we're sharing data, we're sharing contractors, and we're commissioning evidence where it's not already. So what that will enable us to do is where a community at risk exists, we can look at a number of fells and understand how to prioritise where our investment goes to make the most of that investment. So in summary, peatlands are incredibly important in their own right, but they're also important in ensuring that our water environment, our rivers and our wetlands also remain healthy. We're committed to the Great North Bog area and the peatlands of England, and we are continually working in partnership. The partnership and the ambition is key for climate resilience, climate adaptation and climate mitigation. So that's what I would like to share with you today. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much, Alison. That's great. I hope my limited IT skills worked for you. I'm really now pleased to introduce Sean McGeever from Defra. We work with Sean a lot, and I don't think we've ever had a more supportive and hard-working group of civil servants working on behalf of protected landscapes and peatland and the things that we're working on now together. Sean's going to talk to us a little bit about Defra's role in stimulating private green finance for peatland restoration. Sean.
Thank you very much, Chris. I've de-risked my IT by not actually having any slides. So I'm going to talk to you, and hopefully you won't miss all the pictures and we'll concentrate on the words in my case. So my name's Sean McGeever. I am the Deputy Director at the UK's Department for Environment, responsible for, amongst many things, peatlands, and that involves peatland restoration, protection, and also sort of R&D around peatland. We are responsible, my division, for the England Peat Action Plan, which we published in May, and also for delivering on the net zero commitments that we've made on peatland. So what you've seen today is a sort of brilliant example of the partnerships that are required. So in order to deliver on these commitments, this isn't something just for government. It's not something just for NGOs. It's not just something for landowners or for private sector, but really something that we have to do working together. And the Great North Bog is really a shining example of that. I mean, it's brilliant to see peatland as a whole getting the profile that we're seeing. And I just want to say thank you to the IUCN and all the partners for this peatland pavilion. It's just amazing to see the profile that it's getting and the profile that it deserves. I know a lot of people have been working for many decades on this, quietly and unsung. So it's just great to see all of that being promoted and put out there. And there was a great session yesterday on the England Peat Action Plan. And I love that slides of Christine's family. It just really brings it home in terms of what you're doing, but also for me really gives me hope, because you can see the destruction turned into something beautiful, and it shows that we can actually do it. And there's nothing more credible than actually seeing that in action. And as Sarah Fowler said, they know what they're doing in the Great North Bog. So what's also really important, I think, in terms of what the Great North Bog's doing is that it's on a landscape scale. And this isn't just about net zero, as Sarah said. It's not just about reducing emissions or capturing carbon. You know, it's the full gamut of things that we've seen and that Alison was just saying in terms of flood management, water quality. What you didn't see, I think, Chris, you flicked over the map of the Great North Bog, but on that you can see very clearly the incidents of flooding that are all downstream from these degraded bogs. And you know, this is about adaptation as well as mitigation. So we set ourselves some quite big targets. We've seen some of those numbers today in our net zero strategy. The government set itself a target of 280,000 hectares by 2050. This is for deep peat. And at the moment, I think in terms of what we're directly supporting, we're at around 3,000 hectares a year. So we have to average by 2050, 9,300 hectares a year. So there's quite a ramp up that we have to do if we're going to get there. So what role, I guess, for government in all of this? As you've seen today, this is about partnership. We play, I think, you know, a relatively small part in that, and certainly in the delivery. You know, our role is really about enabling that delivery, creating the right framework, and mobilizing the resources that we're going to need, or helping to mobilize the resources that we're going to need. So what role for us in all of this? So I think, first of all, it is about getting started. And you know, we're really proud to be supporting the Great North Bog and the partnerships therein through our Nature for Climate Fund. We're providing grants that are, you know, funding that amazing work that you saw, Chris, on your slides, sort of industrial scale restoration that you're doing, which is amazing to see. But ultimately, you know, the purpose of that is to create the capacity and support the capability that's there. And part of what we're doing there is also is what we're just about to announce, but we put out for proposals, the discovery grants as part of our Nature for Climate Fund. The Nature for Climate Fund, by the way, is a joint trees and peat fund, because we see the two as being really important together. And Chris alluded to the fact that it's important that we don't plant trees in the wrong place, and that we make sure that we can preserve our peatlands. So the discovery grants are there really to try and build capability. And we've been really excited to see just how the sort of huge demand that's come up through those, and sort of what the reaction has been. It's really far exceeded our expectation. The point there really is to start to build that capability and capacity in that pipeline, so that you have the people on the ground at scale who can actually do this restoration at the level we need to do over the next 30 years. So the next thing that we do is we support regulation, and we're working with the Financing Nature Recovery Coalition to set standards, rules and tools in terms of how private sector finance will come in. I mean, we've looked at the scale of the finance we need. We certainly have the grant stuff. We don't want to crowd that out, because we think what we have here is potentially a really important tradable commodity in terms of carbon. We also need to make sure that as we do that transition into sort of potentially farming carbon or shifting land use, that people who make a living from that land can continue to do so and engage in the process. So making sure we get that framework right is going to be important. We've also been working with the IUCN and the Scottish Government. We've been supporting them to develop the Peatland Code, and I think there's another version of the Peatland Code coming out in 2022, and that's really going to help also to provide that framework for private investment. And then, as a whole, Defra is very keen to support green finance and green and to bring in that private sector funding. So we've got a couple of initiatives, one that's ongoing at the moment, which is called the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund. Again, that is a sort of broader pre-pipeline investment fund, and we're developing a big nature impact fund, which is about blended finance to de-risk private sector. Some of you may have caught also a presentation earlier on in the week from National Parks Partnerships, who are sort of linked to the national parks, and their nature Net Zero with Nature initiative, and they've launched a fund called Revere that's looking also to come into this space. So there's a huge amount of interest in private sector investment. What we're really keen to do is to make sure that we can support the capacity on the ground, the people who, as you've seen today, know what they're doing, they know how to make this a reality, and make sure that the frameworks are in place to make sure that that is done properly, that investors have confidence, and that confidence is then delivered on. And I think a really important part of that, I mean, a huge sort of cornerstone of that is the credibility of the delivery partners on the ground, and the brand that they bring. And the Great North Bog is such a powerful brand, it's such a powerful partnership. The experience is obviously there, the fact that you've got national parks and AONBs and wildlife trusts and the Environment Agency, and landowners, and all of that working together. It just is such an attractive proposition. So we're really looking forward to continuing to work with you and to really try and bring that private investment in alongside our own. Very keen not to crowd out that private investment. So thank you very much, Chris. Back over to you.
Thanks very much, Sean. That's all great to hear. Now, linked to what Sean's just been saying, Sean's been talking about Defra stimulating private green finance for peatland restoration and the role of the public sector, and there will always be a role for the public sector in supporting public goods. We've had some really significant private sector help in the shape of the water companies in the last 10, 15 years. And we've got Liz Barber, the Chief Executive of Yorkshire Water here. Yorkshire have been a great supporter of our work. Who's going to talk about why water companies are supporting the Great North Bog. Liz.
Thanks, Chris, and good morning, everyone. What I can say is that the Northern Peatlands are profoundly important to the provision of water supply in our region. Ourselves at Yorkshire Water, 45% of the water we supply to customers originates in catchments and deep peat catchments. And that will be similar. Northumbrian Water, United Utilities, Severn Trent, we all depend on the Northern Peatland for our water provision. And the reason why we are so keen to support the restoration of peat is because it has such an important role to play. When we see it degrade, there's nothing to soak up the water. There's rapid runoff. It can cause flooding. It causes issues. It can mobilize particles into the water so that we have to remove them before we treat. As peat dries out, it releases colour, and we have to use chemicals and energy to remove that colour. And of course, we need to be able to store it as a natural storage. So in times of profound dry periods or long dry periods, peat can store the water for us. Of course, we've got reservoirs, but it can store, it's another storage. It's another place that we can hold water when times are dry. So you can imagine when peat degrades, it can have a very, very significant impact and will continue to have an increasing impact on our ability to supply water, which is just so, so important. And not only that, it's not our ability to supply, but it actually costs money. So we were, this AMP, contemplating a £30 million MIEX plant at Bradford to take out the discoloration from water from our reservoirs up in the upper Nidderdale. And we've managed to avoid that by restoring peatland and also managing the abstraction of water at certain places in certain times by monitoring that discoloration. So these plants are serious plants. I recently went to visit one in the south of the region. That one cost about 30-40 million. This is all customers' money. And they're serious pieces of kit. They use a lot of energy and they use chemicals for us to remove that discoloration. So it's not great for water supply. It's not great for carbon. It's not great for use of chemicals. So it's just not clever all around. Now, there are other benefits, of course, around the degrading of peat. much better speakers, much more knowledgeable speakers than I would talk about ecosystems, biodiversity, carbon storage and sequestration, wildfires management, and of course, and importantly, the state of the rural economy. And as Yorkshire's second largest landowner, we're not here to support the restoration of peat solely because we are a water supplier, but also because as a significant landowner, there is a huge moral obligation for those reasons as well. Now, what's happening with climate change is that as peat degrades, it becomes less resilient to the impacts of climate change. It is all the more important that we get after these restoration projects as soon as possible because they take time. So we don't only invest as water companies in our own land, we're very keen to invest in partnerships to restore peat elsewhere on other people's land effectively. And over for Yorkshire Water, over the last 15 years, or the 15 years to 2025, we will have invested £23 million directly. We've supported Moles of the Future and the Yorkshire Peat Partnerships funding for the 2015 to 2020 period to the tune of 18 million. And this year we've worked with them, supported the Yorkshire Peat Partnerships to secure £4.5 million through funding through the Nature for Climate Fund. This was all really brought to life for me on a recent visit to Fleet Moss, which is really the source of the River Wharfe. I was really profoundly shocked by the state of the peat there. Somebody is an ex-geographer. I've done lots of peat balls in my time and studied it in my university years. I was really shocked by the state of the peat there. And there were channels in that peatland that were way above head height. It's a huge area and so profoundly important to the health of the River Wharfe. So it's important, really profoundly important for water supply, water quality, flood attenuation, but so importantly for carbon sequestration. And that's really why I was here to explain why we're big supporters, and that's why.
Brilliant, thank you, Liz. Well, we're very grateful to you and your water company colleagues in United Utilities, Anglian, Northumbrian. You've been a huge help to us over the years, and hope we'll continue to be so. We've talking of finance, we've got Stephen Clarke with us from Natural England, who's going to talk to us about the Nature for Climate Fund. Sean mentioned that earlier. Very heavily weighted towards trees, I might add, but still lots of opportunity for peatland. And Stephen's going to talk to us about Nature for Climate Fund as a public sector vehicle for investing in peatland restoration. Stephen.
Hello, can you see my slides?
Not yet, but I'm sure we will.
Okay. Is that any better? Okay, well. Check again.
I think in the interest of time, if we...
Yeah, I'll just talk through them, that's fine.
I'm sure we'd love to...
Sorry about that. So I'm the manager of the Nature for Climate Peatland Grant Scheme, which is the peat part of the Nature for Climate Fund. I'm going to run through and say what the scheme is and why I think it's a very useful tool for funding what we're doing now, particularly for Great North Bog. So the scheme has a budget of over £50 million, which we need to give away in grants over the next 4 years, so through to 2025. We're looking to bring in around 35,000 hectares of land back into restoration management. And we're aiming for that to generate a cumulative 9 megatons of CO2 equivalents by 2050. Sorry, 2050. It's not quite the 200 million that Great North Bother are asking for, but 50 million over 4 years is a good start. As I say, we're due to run until March 2025, and we are offering multi-year grants. So the round of grants that were offered this year were 4-year grants. We'll offer another round next year, which will be 3 years, and then 2 years in the third year of the scheme. We're looking for projects in both the uplands and the lowlands. We're offering 2 different types of grant. Standard restoration grant designed to deliver work on the ground at 75% funding, and discovery grant, as you heard Sean refer to earlier, which is specifically set up to allow potential applicants to identify and address blockers that would prevent them from making good restoration applications. And the discovery grant is funded at 100%, up to 100% of eligible costs. Now, the restoration grant was specifically limited to 75% of Treasury funding because we do recognise the appetite and the opportunities to bring in private finance, and you've heard some of that today. And we're particularly keen to bring in Peatland Code where we can, but we've already had significant investment, and you've heard some of that from previous speakers. There's currently no minimum or maximum size on the grants, so we can take from single applicants up to large partnerships, but specifically we're looking for applicants who have control of sufficient land to allow them to actually raise the water table across large areas to deliver those key carbon benefits. And it is a carbon benefit which the project is fundamentally measured by, although the wider range of benefits that were listed previously are all recognised, including one which I haven't heard mentioned yet, which is protecting the historic environment, which is quite an important point of healthy peatlands. Now, the eligibility for the scheme, there's a very wide range of eligibility for applicants. So we can include environmental groups, local authorities and businesses, charities, public bodies, landowners directly, and other organisations. And as I said earlier, primarily we're looking for people who can work at a landscape scale. So we have in the scheme already, in the first restoration round, we have grants that are single large site, single organisation, through to partnerships with many sites and many partners. Now, we've maintained a very wide range of eligible activities under the grant. So we can fund the physical restoration works. We can fund the physical restoration to raise the water tables again. We can fund the re-establishment of peat habitats on top of the soils, monitoring, survey, project administration, which has been a big issue in the past, provision of access, community engagement, training, partnership development, and partnership management and equipment purchase, as long as it can all be tied back to fundamentally to the need to deliver the water table management and the carbon management. Now, the scheme is run by Natural England for Defra, and we work very closely. Sean is co-chair of my project board. Part of the benefit of the way we set things up is that I have a dedicated team which covers a very wide range of specialisms. So we can provide advice on restoration techniques, on protected sites issues, historic environment, partnership working, monitoring and evaluation, but also on claims and payments and the agri-environment, working on agri-environment scheme land. And one of the advantages of the way we're set up is that my team cover all the different elements of the scheme. So we designed it, we write the guidance, we provide the advice, we can promote it to potential applicants, we assess applications, we process claims, we do the monitoring, and we manage the risk, and we provide progress reports into government. Now, that's quite a complicated thing to do, and it involves all sorts of firewalls to make sure that we manage and provide an audit trail. But the advantage of that is that we do have a virtually a one-stop shop. We're heavily linked into the other authorities and government bodies. So, as I said, have a Peat project board that the Environment Agency and Forest Commission are on, as well as Natural England and Defra. We're also linked in with the Peatland Code team, and I was on calls with them just yesterday about how to better present their scheme as a tie-in with ours for the next round of our grants. We're also widely linked within Natural England. So my scheme team sits within Natural England's Peatland team, who are responsible for delivering our part of the Peatland Action Plan. We work very closely with area teams, national teams, and various other initiatives that we're involved with, like Nature Recovery Network, Nature-Based Solutions, Shared Outcomes Fund, the Investment Readiness Fund that Sean mentioned, and we're also looking at the development of future environment schemes. So the value of having the team set up the way we are, that what we offer is quite a flexible approach. What we can fund, if there are problems coming up, we can help unpick them. We can help fund all the different aspects of delivering peatland restoration. And that's what I was going to say.
Thank you very much for saying it too. And we have, as a coalition, taken advantage of the Nature for Climate Fund already. With Tim has led some successful work on our joint behalf between Yorkshire Peat Partnership and the North Pennines in the Restoration Fund, and we've got some anticipation of some results around the Discovery Grant anytime now, I think. So
Discovery announcements should be next week. Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you. Well, talking of funding, I'd like to introduce you to Jenny Fox-Dad, who is from the Esmée Fairbairn Foundation. And Jenny and her colleagues have been great people to work with towards generating support for the Great North Bog and the IUCN UK Peatland programme as well. And so Jenny's going to talk to us about a funder's perspective on working with the Great North Bog.
Morning, everybody, and thanks so much for inviting me along. Danger of going towards the end of the agenda is that you worry slightly that you're going to repeat what other people have already said very eloquently. And also, I know that we're a bit pressed for time, so I'll try and keep this brief. But I did want to, aside from my organisation's view, as an individual, I just wanted to stress that we've heard so much at this COP about fossil fuels. I'm sure there's some fossil fuel industry representatives within the audience. And I think it's really important to remember that peat is kind of an original fossil fuel. And as per all fossil fuels, it should be kept in the ground. And indeed, in the case of peat, we can actually look after it and expand it. So aside from that, I work at the Esmée Fairbairn Foundation. And in terms of a funder's perspective on the Great North Bog, we like it a lot. So we very recently made a decision to award grant funding and share between the partners from the Great North Bog. That's going to be a pretty substantial sum for us. It's about £2.75 million. All of that is revenue support. And what do I mean by that? It's basically posts within the 6 peat partnerships that make up the Great North Bog. Some of those posts are existing and some are new. And to set that in a funding context, that's going to be about 20% of the foundation's grant spend on environment for this year. So it really is a significant sum of money for us. Now, we've got 5 priorities at Esmée on the environment, and we consider peat to be so important that it is one of those 5 priorities. And as part of the peat priority, the Great North Bog was an obvious frontrunner for support. So why is that? Well, the collaboration includes some safe hands, which can nurture those that are newer in their peat partnership development. We know we've got global leaders on peat restoration in this cohort, and those that have got the potential to move into that space as well. So there's talent and evolving talent. Then there's the attractiveness of scale. So the Great North Bog is at a scale of landscape and a scale of ambition that's rare to see in the environment sector. We need more collaborations if we're to make progress at the rate we need to avert the climate and the nature crises. And the scale from east to west, or however you want to slice it, in the north of England, takes in huge cities and very rural, unpopulated or depopulated landscapes, which means we can mix up the offer. From urban communities understanding that peat is a nature and climate superpower right on their doorstep that they can be really proud of, to innovative restoration trials in the middle of, well, frankly, blooming nowhere, and job creation for people to be able to feel the benefit of peat in their pocket and to securing a just and a green transition. There's also an element of risk and opportunity and the unknown with the Great North Bog. We need private finance to join the fray and to put its back into peat restoration and conservation, but it needs to be done in the right way and on the right terms. Peat is ahead of other habitats on that journey, and we very much hope to see a real shift in the commitments, basically the commitments on the cash. Our investment at Esmée is not entirely altruistic. We want and expect money to grow more money, and that means much more government money and philanthropic money. But it has to be the right private money that helps on peat in the Great North Bog. There's many more perspectives I could give you because the foundation is a real peat champion in philanthropic circles. Not an opportunity goes by without me extolling its virtues, but on the specifics of the Great North Bog, I hope I've been able to pick out expertise and growing expertise, scale, variety of interventions, communities, and risk and the unknown as our top 5 perspectives on why we are investing so highly in the Great North Bog. Thank you very much.
Jenny, thank you for that. And I want to start by just thanking you for Esmée Fairbairn's investment in the Great North Bog Coalition. We're all hugely grateful. You've been an incredibly good funder to work with to get us to this point, and for your previous investment in some of our peatland restoration work as well. Thank you very much. And there were points very well made about this being part of a funding package, and there's a role for the public sector alongside this and for the right kind of private sector investment. So thank you. So we're going to move to a Q&A session now, and you can meet some of the people who are involved in leading the teams that do the work on the ground. Steve, Paul, Sarah, Robert, and Tim and Chris. And I think we're going to be able to see your smiling faces on screen. Just to introduce yourselves very briefly, I'll say your first name and then just say who you are and where you're from. And you'll probably need to come off mute. Starting with the person who came up with the name The Great North Bog, Christine.
Hello, nice to see everybody this morning. My name's Christopher Dean. I'm the head of the Most of the Future Partnership.
Tim.
Hello everyone, I'm Tim Tom. I'm the Peat Programme Manager for Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, so the lead on the Yorkshire Peat Partnership.
And Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Ledbetter for the North Pennines AONB Partnership, and I manage the Peatland Programme.
Steve.
Good morning, I'm Steve Trotter from Cumbria Wildlife Trust, and we lead the Cumbria Peat Partnership.
Sarah.
Hi everyone, I look after the Peatland work at Lancashire Wildlife Trust and also help coordinate the Lancashire Peat Partnership.
And finally, Robert.
Morning everyone, Rob Mayhew, Head of Conservation and Environment from Northumberland National Park Authority, here representing Northumberland Peat Partnership.
So thank you very much for joining us this morning. If you are in the room, as it were, if you're in the Peatland Pavilion, I think you can probably pose questions there, perhaps through Sarah Proctor from the IUCN UK Peatland Programme, who's there with you. And if you are watching online, then the Q&A function is your route to that. I'm going to start with a question about the how we came up with the geography. So how did we decide on the area to be included in the Great North Bog? And is it simply just all of the upland? Chris, Paul, Tim, when you sat down together coming up with this originally, what were you thinking? Chris.
Yeah, I think that the driver for it came from a few different fronts, really. We were about to make some bids into HLF between us, and we really would rather like to collaborate more and compete less, so that was certainly a driver for it. It was also just at the time that the landscapes review came out, and the protected areas were looking for bigger ways to collaborate together and outside their boundaries. We did a little bit of mapping work, and it became fairly obvious that a lot of the peatland in the north of England sat within protected areas, so that also became a good driver for it. And those things put together, and a realization that there are some big areas that we couldn't deal with as individual partnerships. So there was some big advocacy pieces which would be better put from the peatland community as a whole across the uplands of the north of England into government and into some of the other funders collectively, rather than us all trying to carry that message individually. So there was a number of things that sort of came together over a short period of time that drove that. I think certainly for me anyway.
Anybody want to add to that?
I think the other aspect was that politically the word north was in the minds of politicians for a whole host of reasons, and actually we felt that there was some capital to be made there. I think levelling up was starting to come into the language. We perhaps shouldn't call that wetting up now, but that would be from a Peatland perspective. So yeah, we were thinking politically as well.
Other parts of the country are also available, of course, they're just not as good. So in terms of the focus on the upland, we are focused on the upland in the Great North Bog. We're focused on the upland protected landscapes of the north, which you've seen on the map before. There's a lot of work going on in the lowlands as well. Why are we focused just on the uplands and in this particular collaboration? Because we are, and that's where the focus is Tim.
I mean, it's quite a topic of discussion within the coalition, but from my perspective, actually in Yorkshire we have lowland and uplands, and just looking at the work we're starting to do in the lowlands, it's a very different set of audiences for us, very different groups of landowners, very different issues. It's a lot more about agricultural impacts, arable impacts, and I think even if we did join the two together, we'd end up having two very parallel kind of partnerships to deal with, different organisations to deal with, local authorities in the lowlands, and it's complicated enough as it is. And we just felt that for now, doing this in the uplands was the real way to go. Most of the partnerships also have parallel lowland projects, so I'm not sure that it affects that too much.
Okay, let's just go a little bit wider and bring some of our other colleagues in. About opportunities for communities and citizens to engage in peatland restoration and monitoring. Where are they, and who'd like to come in on that?
Can I come in there? So obviously, in our region, in sort of Lancashire, we have upland peatland surrounding sort of the Great Manchester conurbation. So there's a real opportunity to work with what we do, and then with the other partners in the Great North Bog to really link up those populations with the importance of the uplands that surround those cities. So hopefully through the Great North Bog we can look at things we've done through Bog in a Box projects that link up schools with peatland restoration, and for example the Pendle Hill Partnership, which is around the Bowland Fells in Lancashire. The Pendle Peat Pie is at COP, at the moment, so to try and bring people through other means, through food, and link that with the importance of their peatlands. So I hope some people actually at COP have tasted that tasty pie, but just really thinking about different ways we can link people into how important our peatlands really are to all of us, and we need to act now really. So yeah, tuck into the pie and think about peat.
Nice to start with a nice northern stereotype, like we're all keen on pie. I mean, we are, but Strutter.
There's a huge opportunity for people and local communities to get involved in the actual practicalities of peatland restoration, and some of the slides that we've seen so far this morning show the initial phases of restoration, and there's putting peatlands back into recovery is a long process, and to get them to the initial stages, re-wetting, that's the wetter the better, but then the later stages are about enabling them to start growing again actively so that they draw down carbon from the atmosphere. And part of that is around, for example, planting sphagnum out. And to scale up, we need to plant out sphagnum and enable sphagnum recovery across huge swathes of landscape. And the more people we can get involved in helping with that, the better. And there's a real opportunity to get involved both at monitoring, survey, but also practical hands-on conservation and recovery, nature recovery. So lots of opportunity to local communities.
Thanks, Steve. Robert, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry, Chris, didn't hear you come in there. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's vital to put the public, particularly those folk that are living in the towns and cities, put them in touch and get them to understand the importance of peatlands and peatland in the uplands particularly. not just because they're that vital store of carbon. I think it's stats along lines that peatlands globally cover 3% of the Earth's surface, and yet they actually harbour twice as much carbon than all the forests collectively around the world. So yes, they're an important carbon store, but it's also that other sort of ecosystem services that they provide, the water purification, that clean drinking water that folk in the towns and cities have. So education and engagement is key and vital to actually get people, the public, the general public, to value that association that they have themselves with that upland peatland.
Chris and then Paul.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, huge opportunity for citizen science. We're at the bottom end of the Great North Bog. We're surrounded by 11.5 million people in the regions that surround us, and that is a fantastic opportunity because it is something that people can really get involved in, and it basically involves people auditing what we're doing. So if the general public are auditing what we're doing by monitoring work, then that's terrific. And the monitoring work that we undertake, if it's done physically on site, the majority of that time is spent walking on site, walking off site, and the data gathering is generally relatively easy to carry out. So it's an excellent area for people to get involved. So we've found that has been a good way of engaging with people.
And there was a question about monitoring, so I'm going to take it that we've kind of started to answer that one. And Paul, just to bring you in.
Some of the things we've done that have been community oriented are to use peat depth days. So as part of our survey work, we have to have peat depth data, and we don't have a lot of peat depth data across the whole area. So it's a simple thing where people can get involved with a rod and a GPS unit and take real data that we use to help us assess and develop specifications. And the other thing too, I'm quite keen on is a sense of pride in small areas who don't really know, perhaps they live beside an ecosystem that's as important as a rainforest. So for example, my son's school, people know what I do, and now the school is looking at studying peatlands instead of rainforests. Not that I have anything against rainforests, but they don't realize that they live next door to a climate busting machine. And the idea of developing a sense of pride about that ecosystem is important as well.
I think really important that we can reach into urban communities as well, and I know some of our colleagues have been doing that too. And we've got 6 minutes left, so I'll probably take 2 more questions. I do have one that I'm saving for the end from someone. Actually, I'm going to take that now. So, given your wealth of experience, we'll probably go around the panel. What's the thing that you're most proud of in terms of your peatland work? Try and sum this up in a sentence if you can, and I don't know who wants to go first. Put myself back on mute. Chris.
It's quite simple, really. We've averted climate catastrophe at the southern end of the blanket bog landscape of northern England. It's as simple as that, really. If we hadn't stepped in, if our partners had not stepped in 20 years ago, then we would have been in an appalling position now. So that this is really big in terms of climate and restoration, and I think that's the main point.
The sense of scale of it is just tremendous. Still, even though I'm involved in it, I say all the time, I'm very impressed with it. Paul.
3 quick things. The first time I saw a grip get filled in and saw the water back up, it was a very visceral reaction. This has been up 15 years ago. That was quite an exciting time. Realize you're doing something on the ground that actually almost had an instantaneous reaction. And then the connections we make. So we started off as a small project. Now we have Dianna Kopansky from the United Nations working with us. I love that stuff about the connections and bringing other people in. I think that's quite important. And then finally, seeing the work we do from Google Earth. You can actually see the work we've done from a satellite image, which is quite satisfying.
I'd like to go next, Tim, and then I'll bring in other partnership colleagues.
So I'm going to take that model and throw in 3 very quick things. So the thing I'm most proud of is the people that I work with. I think I have some incredible people that are highly skilled, but not just that, they're absolutely passionate about this. They are saving the world, and I'm really proud of them. For my personal perspective, I think the Fleet Moss site that I think we saw in one of the pictures was what really, when I was a National Park Authority ecologist, was what kicked everything off for us. And it took us a long time to develop the skills to deal with that one site. It's so badly eroded. And we were told from day one in 2008 that it was impossible, that those kind of degraded sites were gone, we'd lost them. And to see those sites recovering, full of sphagnum, full of life now, dragonflies, otters, all sorts of things up there, is a real proud achievement. I think it's probably my bloody mindedness as well that I managed to prove people wrong as well, which I'm particularly proud of. And then the final one is the way we've used technology, the way we've embraced technology, the UAVs, the drones, the GIS data, the people that we have that work on that work. So it's great to be able to take technology and convert it into sphagnum on the ground at the end of the day.
Fantastic. We're proud of your bloody mindedness too. It gets things done. What about Steve or Sarah, Rob? Steve?
I could cite all of the above things that people are proud about, but if I was to choose something slightly different, it's the finding solutions to problems that have multiple benefits downstream and bringing people together in a focused way, in communities who perhaps haven't necessarily always worked well together, but bring them together in a kind of a cohesive vision and getting on with the job and delivering. That's the thing that I'm really proudest of. And from a personal point of view, I used to work on Kinder Scout, started there in 1990, and I went up there with my boss, David Wilson at the time. We looked at the Kinder Scout plateau and thought, I won't use the swear words we use, but what on earth are we going to do here to avert the crisis that Christine just described? So to see the progress that has been made through all sorts of partners, especially More to the Future and Chris, has just been overwhelming. It's absolutely amazing. And it just kind of indicates what we can do if we can just keep up the momentum. And here in Cumbria, we've only really just started compared to the Pennines. We've only done 5,000 hectares, another 40,000 to do. But it just gives me great optimism and heart that we can sort this with all of the skills and expertise and energy and enthusiasm that people, our colleagues, all have. So that's where I'll finish.
Thank you, Steve. Do you want to quickly say anything, Sarah, Rob, around this?
Yeah, I think
Almost
echoing a lot of what's said, really. I think when you're told that there's sites that are not restorable, but then, and we know that it takes a long time for peat to accumulate, but how quickly we've seen sites change when we've used our sort of innovative thinking to find the solutions for these sites. And that makes me really proud to look at the scale of what we've achieved and think about now we're coming together what we can still achieve to avert this crisis. So that makes me very proud.
All right, Rob.
From our perspective up here in Northumberland, 100 years ago, we thought it was the right thing to be planting trees all over the country. When we found out that we actually started planting trees in the wrong place, we've seen 50 years worth of collaborative working between peatland restorers and the Forestry Commission to actually correct some of those mistakes from the past. I think what I'm proud of is that people are actually prepared to come together, hold the hand up. Yes, we've made mistakes. Let's learn from those mistakes and let's move forward positively in the right direction for climate and for the environment.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm trying to draw this to a close. There were some other good questions about funding. If we'd have had Sean on the panel, we'd have asked a question that somebody raised about the future for public sector funding after the NH for Climate Fund. So it's something for us all to be thinking about. I'll just finish with this. When my older daughter, who's now 22, was very small, I said, "What do you think Daddy does at work?" And she said, "Shopping and dancing." I wish. I asked her when she was about 6, "What do you think Daddy does at work?" And she said, "Daddy saves the wild." Well, Daddy tries, as do all our colleagues on the screen and many of you watching and listening. And I've only since our peatland work has really taken off and really become so collaborative, have I actually thought that Daddy might actually help to save the wild alongside all of the people that you're hearing from today. Not just the people that do it on the ground, but the people that fund it, the people that advocate for it, the people that work in all spheres to try and make this happen. And I think together, this particular bit of the wild, I think we will save for all the benefits that it brings, especially for climate in the context of COP26. Thank you for joining us this morning, and thanks to all my colleagues for being with us on the panel.